All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. So today we're going in the psychological arena, which is not something I do very often, but this gentleman spent some time on the live podcast and he blew everybody away, including myself. So I thought it'd be robbery not to share him with the television audience. So today we're looking at, I'm going to say, black boys and absentee fathers, but we're going to discover that it's way bigger than that. So I'm not going to waste any more time and let him introduce himself and tell you about him. So take it away, Mr. Bryant.
Thank you for that, Ricardo. My name is Leo Bryant, licensed professional counselor here in Atlanta, Georgia. However, my clientele is pretty much boundless as it pertains to the virtual consultations. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. I feel like it's a continuance of our conversation.
It really is. I don't normally listen to my old stuff. I was like, I need to listen and see the nuggets that we dropped. We couldn't really get into. But you're being modest because you have like 5 titles behind your name. So what are those titles? You're being modest. What are the other titles?
Okay, so I have an MBA. That's one of them, master's degree, a master's in business administration. I also am the owner of private practice, in which we also are a joint practice with MD, Dr. Harold Minerve, here in East Point, Georgia. I'm also working towards my doctoral degree. Almost there. Just got to pass the dissertation part. So. I'm
not even going to say, y'all know how I feel about doctorates and dissertations, so we're not even going to get there. What's the name of your practice?
Bryant Counseling Services, LLC.
All right. Well, what was that all because he has a lot. If you find him on LinkedIn, he has like 15 things behind his name. So I'm trying to make sure, you got to tell the people you here. You got this is kind of boast yourself and you know.
Well, this is your arena. I mean, pretty much everything stems from the development of what we're talking about today. It's more than psychology and mental health and therapy is more than just a term in my world. Everything from that I participate in, from athletics to my business to my hobbies, it's all material so that I can hopefully one day use to further the DSM, which is pretty much how mental health is documented, and interventions across the world are executed and implemented specifically for Black men. So a lot of my history, a lot of my past, and a lot of my future is dedicated to one day providing evidence supporting some of the theories we're going to talk about and I'm going to expound upon today.
All right, so let's jump into it. So this notion, what sparked the first show on the podcast was, we talk about the absentee of fathers in Black boys' lives, but I don't think we actually think about or know the lasting impact it has on their mentality, the way they are, things of that magnitude. So let's start there, because you work with young Black males consistently. So what do you see, just on a everyday scale? What do you see?
Well, since 2008, I've been working either in a high school as a school counselor, or present day as a counselor in my own organization, Fatherless in Georgia, which originally started out just with Black males, and I kind of expanded to any individual who needs, any minority individual who needs male influence. And what I found is pretty much what was true when I started in 2008 has magnified itself in 2021 as it pertains to the need for not just Black male to Black male interaction, but adult to youth interaction, but more so in a minority community.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask this because we didn't talk about this. So I'm gonna ask anyway. The notion of Black male mentorship programs, do they make a huge difference? Because I've wondered that. We see them sporadically. I've seen some, but I don't see a vast majority. And before I threw my hat in the arena, I was like, does it really make a difference? I'm sure it makes a difference, but does it make a huge difference in the outcome of minority kids' lives being a part of a mentorship program?
It does. It does make a big impact. However, when it's scaled down correctly and it's structured correctly, case in point, one-on-one, us just sitting and talking and fishing, or just having a conversation at a bus stop, can be more impactful than me going to a structured, 10, 15, 20 group thing where somebody's talking and we're breaking out into these little sections and playing cards. Like, it's the intimacy and it is the chemistry between the mentee and the mentor that is the most important part or variable. But to answer your overall question, mentorship will never go out of style because we're humans and we need social interaction.
All right, we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we have more with, I'm going to say Dr. Bryant, because he's going to have to finish because that's his field. He has to finish. Me, not so much. So we're going to come right back from a commercial break from the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we're back with the Dr. Leo Bryant, and we're talking about minority kids and absentee fathers. All right, so we talked about the mentorship program. When you were on the podcast, we talked about you getting referrals for a lack of respect from minority boys, particularly black boys and black women. Can you expound on that for me?
I sure can. And it's I love the fact you asked me that particular question because as of late meaning the last 30 days, there's been an explosion of black men and males between the ages of 14 and I would say 25 that are presently back at home, a large part due to the COVID thing, right? And nobody's able to coexist and cohabitate. And the point I've been trying to make to the moms, who they've been the most aggressive and proactive in trying to keep the peace, is, mom, and how can I don't want to offend nobody. This is not a child. This is not a boy that needs you anymore. And you cannot talk at him. You cannot dictate. You can't give direction. You have to, if you're going to engage, you got to actively listen and you have to learn in the moment. And, a lot of these moms, specifically the black moms, they just cannot understand that concept. And so individually, when I'm working and I'm talking with these black males in our sessions, I have to reinforce, you're not crazy. You're not doing anything wrong. What you're doing is you're walking in your manhood. And I have to break it down to them, help them understand on multiple levels, mental, physical, emotional, that a lot of their quote unquote defiance and opposition, it's not defiance and opposition. It's leadership. You're designed to go out and conquer and create, and you have visions and you have your own ideals and value systems. And when you are reintroduced into this world with specifically the African-American woman, right, who has been your nurturer and your caretaker, well, their mindset a lot of times is so convoluted with masculinity and femininity that they can't cut off. So on some aspects, in some ways, they're supportive, and in other ways, they emasculate. So I have to have separate conversations. One, helping these black men understand that the way you're thinking is how you should be thinking. If you were any other race or creed, you would be applauded, right? Because you're of African American descent, it's almost like institutional slavery in your household. And I know that's
yeah, you have to unpack that one because I did not expect. Well, let me ask you this. So, are you saying that in that scenario, the mother has to almost treat the son as an equal adult?
No, the mother treats the son as what she has had to be, which was a matriarch. However, she doesn't understand, well, once he's left your house or he's transitioned out of your house, well, he's going to set up a patriarch, situation. And for these guys, these kids that are in college who had to come home, or these young men who went out and they got their own families and now they had to come home, they've already established themselves in their other relationships. So now they're back, and these mothers who are supporters are their biggest haters, but they don't know they're hating. And when I say hate, I don't mean they're trying to break these young men down. They're trying to put them into a box that they think is going to protect them and help them continue on some path. Now, what doesn't help the situation is the emergence of so many strong, and we need them in our community, African-American women who are in public. The Stacey Adams, the Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, our vice president, the whole nine, because there's not men, going back to what we previously talked about, there's not Black men mentoring these younger men. See, somebody has to help them understand, we're not being, exemplified on television outside of sports, we being African American men, but it's okay that our women, our queens are making it. If there's no dialogue, now these Black boys, these Black men, right, who are still developing psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, they don't know how to take, their ego doesn't know how to take what they're seeing. You combine that with, racism and all these examples of, Black men still being shot and killed and so on and so forth. It's like, it's too much. So now when they come to me, a therapist, I have to help them to unravel three main layers. The first layer is the pandemic. That's affecting everybody. So everybody's fatigued. Mm. The second is one of two layers of double consciousness. One, you think every time you run into an issue with a police officer, somebody of authority, you're thinking you mess with me because I'm Black. So that's the first layer. The second layer to that is, you mess with me because I'm a man. And then there's a fourth layer. I don't know who I am because every time I take on a different persona or aura, I'm either victimized or I'm made a hero. There's no gray area, meaning if I say that I'm homosexual, I'm put over here. If I say I'm heterosexual, I'm put over here. There's no in between. So you take all these layers on these Black boys, right? And you also combine that with nobody who is in their neighborhood that they're growing up with is talking to them like we're talking right now in person. They're left to their own devices.
All right, hold that thought. All right, so we have to take a break, and when we come back, we definitely going to unpack all that stuff right there. So stick around the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. Okay, you just said a mouthful. So, do you remember the 4 points?
I remember everything I said.
All right, well, let's pick up from the 4 points.
Okay, all right. So, let's talk about the first point, this pandemic situation. See, one of the main things, I'm going to speak from two standpoints, the student and then the athlete. So, let's just start with that. One of the things as a student is, you are allowed to go into these different platforms and explore theories, concepts, and there's no right or wrong. It's all debate, right? That's academia, right? Now, in athletics, you're allowed to do the same thing, but in a different way. And it all is predicated upon being able to socialize, to meet, to compete, right? In some way, whether it's mental or it's physical. As a former athlete, the only way I've ever gotten better is going against somebody better than myself. As a current person in academia, and I've been in academia my whole life, me engaging in conversation in person, right, has allowed me to level up, has allowed my cognitive growth to increase, to expound. Now, again, you take people who need to be communal and you isolate them. We didn't even talk about if they're introverted or extroverted. So what are you doing? You're basically, you're going against everything I've been conditioned from birth to utilize, all my tools in terms of how I learn, right? So if I'm a kinesthetic learner, if I'm a hands-on learner, if I'm audio or visual, like I need these things. So now I'm left to my own devices. I've got a student athlete I'm working with now, and we began every single one of our conversations with, are you a student that's athletic? Are you an athlete that has to be or happens to be a student? Why is that important? Well, before we get into any of our conversations, he needs to understand, what version of his mind he's thinking in, and then what version of his body and his spirit that he's living in, because he's isolated. In the past, in normal times, you have teams, you have coaches. So the culture kind of herds you along emotionally and mentally, so you're not thinking. So now you take these soldiers or these athletes, right, or even these students, and you ask them, I need you to pick your emotion. I need you to pick your train of thought. I need you to redirect yourself. I need you to reframe yourself. They can't. So now you're stuck with this internal dialogue. So that's the first layer of crazy. The second layer of crazy is what we was talking about with this double consciousness thing. You can walk around all day and say, I got $1 million in the bank. I'm not black. You can walk all day and say, you know what? I'm 6'5" and I'm attractive. I'm not black. You can say, okay, well, I got all these things on my resume. I'm not black. But when you're stuck again in the house and you're watching any form of news and all you see is what's being presented, you now realize just how black you are. And you're stuck in your own head. There's nobody else. You're quarantined. The third part, people don't always think about how when you're communicating, being the moms and anybody, you should not talk at people. You should actively listen, learn them in the moment. But if you're not taught how to learn people in the moment and you're not listening to learn, well, you must be waiting to destroy because you're not paying attention to what I'm saying. So
the notion of active listening versus listening just to respond.
Absolutely.
Is the thing.
Yeah. So you got these people who are already 3 out of 4 steps, they're close to suicidal ideations or homicide ideations. Like it's actively happening. And now they go to confide in mom or dad or whomever. But mom and dad or whomever, they're going through their own issues. So now all they can do is say, hey, I need a therapist. I need somebody, right? So now I'm that somebody. So they call me, and a person who would never think about suicide, it's real. They're right on the cusp. And it's because of what we just mentioned, which was those just top 3. And they're simple things, but it all stems from isolation and also stems from people who want to support, not understanding how to support. And I'll conclude in 10 seconds with this and let you ask me whatever you want to ask me. Going now, looking at the black male psyche present day, and I'm focusing on 15 to 25 for a reason. I don't know how to convey to this population that it is okay to be hurt. It is okay to be confused. It's okay not to be Superman. It's okay to have all this energy and not know where to put it. Because the sad part is the black psyche, the black male, doesn't know how to be human. And that's what I'm coming to realize when it all boils down, we put all the layers back. I have to teach these young men how to be human.
Hold that thought, because that's yeah, okay. So we're gonna take our last break, and when we come back, I want to get into this black man superhero syndrome thing that we've kind of taught these young men. So stick around the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. Okay, you done said 15,000 mouthfuls in these last 2 takes. Okay, I like where you went. This notion that black men are supposed to be superheroes or are groomed to believe that. Get into that for me. What does that mean? What does that look like? Like, how does that even start?
Okay. Let's start. So let's start with the origins. The origins is, and I'm only talking about the black men who were born and raised and come from, 400 years of slavery. I'm not going as far back as, Pan-Africa and so on and so forth. That's a whole different caveat.
We would get lost.
Yeah. So when I say African American, I'm talking about culturally raised from this country on up. There's this thing, right, where black boys are all told and taught to be tough. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's interesting because from ages 0 to about 7 or 8, all human beings are androgynous. They don't know if they're male or female, and they don't care. They're kids. They have genitalia, but the genitalia only serves the purpose of what? Peeing and pooping. I don't know if I can say that online, but I said it. But then what happens is when puberty starts to happen, pre-adolescence and adolescence, they start to come into something. And that something could be whatever it's supposed to be. Now, the people around these black boys specifically hypersexualizes them and makes them hyper aggressive. I know because I did it to my sons unconsciously.
How do you do that? Like, how's it done?
Come here, sit down, watch this football game. Come on, we're gonna sign you for this sport. Hey, do these push-ups. Hey, don't play with that toy. That's a Barbie doll. Hey, don't put on your mama's shoes. Don't walk. I don't care. Sit. Be strong. Why are you crying? So it's subtle clues, and you think from and the moms do it more than the dads, to be quite honest, because the mom's like, I don't want my son to be soft. Well, what's soft, mom? Sometimes the softest people make the hardest or the most impactful impact. I know it's double words, but so now, why is this important? And I'm gonna get into it real quick. When you deny a young black male the opportunity from childhood to grow into whoever he is, you are handicapping his God-given talent and his abilities. Genius comes in various forms, and everybody has a piece of it. But if my creativity and my genius has been handicapped because I don't want to run a 100-yard dash, or I don't want to bench press, or I don't want to shoot a basketball, and my motivation, what's in me is, engineering, is science. I want to be like, famous doctor. I want to, Dr. Ben Carson or something. If that child isn't allowed to explore everything, even up to RuPaul, right? There's genius in everything. Now, this child turns into an adult that's stifled, meaning they can't connect on anything other than the surface level. And when it gets real, meaning they get into intimate relationships and partnerships and so on and so forth, it can't go any further than the first surface because they don't know how to connect to anything real because they weren't allowed to connect with what is already inside of them. So a therapist has to come in and break them all. I know because I'm doing it right now to about 4 or 5 grown men between the ages of 35 and 55.
Did you say 35 to 55?
Yes. And breaking them down, going back to their 7-year-old versions of themselves and helping them to understand what happened and helping them to be okay with walking all the way up to now and going in a direction that makes them feel happy.
I mean, what is that? How does that even work? It's like outside of like hypnosis to literally take them back to 7.
Well, the first part is I got to teach you how to have conversation. You and I, we're talking as 2 mature males, and we happen to have higher education, so we have a vocabulary that allows us to convey our emotions and our thoughts, and we're okay with ourselves independent of everybody else. So spiritually, our energy is connecting. Because there are no hidden barriers. But if I'm in a barbershop and I'm trying to have this conversation, well, part of me has to stay hard because I'm in a barbershop and I can't let these fools know, to think that I'm soft. Because then I'm gonna have to throw these hands on them and they're like, okay, well, Leo he can nut to your buck, right? He can throw these hands. So now I can talk about some soft stuff because I've demonstrated that I can, or if they know he's an athlete, he was, so on and so forth. So he can go wherever he wants in the world of conversation and emotion.
So is this a cultural thing as well?
It is definitely a cultural thing. It is the quintessential, one of the quintessential elements that keeps black men from progressing when there's no chains on us?
These cultural ideologies.
Absolutely. It's dumb. It's ludicrous.
So what do we do at this point? Because we're ushering in a new wave of people, black people, that are not necessarily groomed or cropped with all the ideologies from the old school. So how do we change that, since there's this space that it can be done? How do we change that?
Well, the first thing we do is what I'm working towards, which is my life's work, is you chronicle your stories. You know, and this is I got a couple of books I'm writing, right? And these are just different examples of stuff that I went through. And it's not an autobiography. It's my version of a comic book, starring me and the people, my brothers and sisters, and the people in my neighborhoods. It's like folklore, right? You tell your story over and over again, right? And now by telling your story, when it comes to, and this is just the manuscript, the actual book is to be published.
Does it have pictures in it?
At the very end, yeah. The very end.
How is this will be a comic book and there's no pictures?
Well, that ain't a comic book. I said like a comic book. That's the manuscript. But to finish my thoughts as you're perusing that, I tell. Now let's go back to here. This is a great way to sum this all together. Going back to this black mom, right? That is hurting her adult baby, and she's trying to help him. I go to the dads if they're around, and I say, I need for you to tell your son every story about yourself. Just don't have a point. Sit down with him. Tell him what it was like at different ages, what you experienced. Some funny, some not funny. Just talk to him, because he needs, at this moment, he needs wisdom. That's the only thing that's going to help him to bridge these negative thoughts of suicide and so on and so forth. Is he needs substance. You and I, we lived a little bit. We lived, a couple decades, so we can pick and choose memories, and we can kind of, we can strategize. Well, these individuals, they can't. When I'm in a barbershop and people know what I do, we get into deep conversations, and I tell them stories. I don't give them advice. And then they talk about the story. What do the stories do? Well, that's commonplace. Everybody needs to feel like they're included. And that's why I said it doesn't benefit parents to pigeonhole their children, specifically black boys. We let our black girls do almost everything.
Literally.
Our little boys, no, don't do that, no. Why? You put on that dress, walk around them hills. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm simply saying you having this version of creativity may be that one thought that gives you the next code to how we can get to the next dimension. And now we got some science, I don't know, but that's how inspiration works. It works with imagination. And just because I'm limited by my imagination, I shouldn't limit you. And we won't have enough time, but I would also bring in why the black church was a problem, but then at the same time, it was also a great platform, but that's changing and so on and so forth. But all these things play into the psyche of the black male. It's a beautiful, chaotic mystery. And the only people that can solve this Rubik's Cube. What is it? I was say it again.
Rubik's Cube.
Rubik's
Cube. How do you use a word you can't even get?
Y'all know what I'm talking about, though. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we get it.
The only way we can solve that is if we step to the forefront and we make it happen. And that's why it's a beautiful, chaotic mystery, because we're the only people. We being the black males, just us. But if we're not purposely doing what you've created this platform for, on and allow me to share some of my research, it won't get solved. It's almost like the Twix commercial. You got the left Twix and the right Twix, and they think they're doing something special. And the secret to the Twix is put them in the same bag. Well, you're the right Twix, I'm the left Twix, and what is going to make this dynamic is us working together, which is the whole point of Greek fraternities, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, we already
it's to continue and further the research. W.E.B. Du Bois and George Washington Carver and all those lessons learned, and our founders is to constantly in Africa, there's this, I got a tattoo, it's a Sankofa bird. And the Sankofa bird is about taking wisdom from the past and passing it to the generation to come. It has nothing to do with you, present tense. It has everything to do with the stories that are in that book. Those are stories that I heard hanging out with old people in the watermelon fields in South Florida. They ain't my stories, it's their stories. I just live what I heard them say, and now I got to pass that to my sons and your kids. That's what it's about. We got to leapfrog all this oppression and all this ignorance and all this lack of knowledge by sharing stories. That's why the slave trade was so impactful, because they cut literally the roots. But we're doing it to ourselves.
Yes, we are. All right, I'm gonna stop you there because now we have to go an hour, and I'm not gonna do that with you today. All right, so there's so many things on. It's fine. He was gunning for a part 2. He got his wish. He was gunning for a part 2, so we're gonna have to do a part 2 because he came and dropped all this. He didn't drop this on the podcast, so he came and dropped all this here. So we have to do a part 2 because clearly we couldn't get into the stuff we need to get into. But we want to say thank you to our guest today, Dr. Leo Bryant. We're speaking that because he has to finish because of the research he's doing. And we will see you guys next Monday, same time, same place on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.